Well, Maharashtra has been one of the most urbanized states in India as a matter of proportion as well as in absolute numbers. There's 45% of the population was urban then, and maybe after 14, 15 years, I'm sure we must have crossed the 50% mark. Sidco experiment, I think, is one of the great success stories in India because it conceptualized not only the town planning part but also the commercial and land economics part was really, really well thought of. And engaging with the private sector was also well thought of. So that's the reason probably you see New Mumbai the way it has evolved as a greenfield city. As we know, SDGs 11, the housing is an important part of that, and we have to reach it by in a limited time frame. So, I mean, we talk of public policy as is what government does, but actually, public policy becomes public only if public knows about it. So, I think that your intervention and your effort, I think, extremely important. One insight thing is also very important because people are either worried or fed up or annoyed with things happening, but not understanding why it is the way it is. There has to be some bottleneck, some chain of causation which is leading to it. If you have to improve on it, we have to tinker along with that chain of causation somewhere by making resources available differently.
Hi, welcome to Urban Insights. I'm Jayashree Kuru. I have with me Sameer Unhale. He's the State Joint Commissioner, Municipal Administration of Maharashtra. Thank you so much for joining us. And today we're talking about affordable housing. And why are we doing that? Because someone has to. The share of affordable housing in the Indian market has been declining steadily over the last 4 years. And it's not that there is no demand at the base of the pyramid, it is that the supply has been diverted into what is selling very well today, and that is the premium market. And everybody is talking about the premiumization of the Indian market. But there needs to be policies, there needs to be an effort to bring this back to normalcy. And we'll understand from Mr. Unhale why this is. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Let's talk about the overview of the Maharashtra urban market. You got Mumbai and Pune as the big markets, and you've got a lot of it's one of the most urbanized states other than Tamil Nadu. Tell us about the urban profile of the state and also touch upon housing.
Yeah, so first of all, Jayashree, thank you for inviting me here to do this podcast with you. It's great to collaborate and interact, and we learn so many things with this discussion. So, thanks a lot for this opportunity. Well, Maharashtra has been one of the most urbanized states in India as a matter of proportion as well as in absolute numbers. like, of course, the 2011 numbers that we have, there's 45% of the population was urban then, and at maybe after 14, 15 years, I'm sure we must have crossed the 50% mark. And maybe in absolute terms, if you take the voters as a proxy to the increase in the population, so then I think we have must be around 6.5 to 7 crores or 65 to 70 million people staying in the urban areas of Maharashtra. And as we know, we have 36 districts. Two of them are exclusively urban, which is the Mumbai suburban and the Mumbai city district. Remaining 34, of course, are a mix of urban and rural with this varying degrees in them. And as we know, you cannot have a city without a house. So you can have infrastructure, you can have businesses, you can have even industries, but it becomes a house, a city only if there are houses in a city. So the linkages of houses and cities is too intricate, too linked. And when we look at housing as a sector, we realize that there are multiple departments who influence the housing sector in any state for that matter. So if you look at the case of Maharashtra, the land rights will with the revenue department, whether the land is non-agricultural or agriculture is determined by the revenue department. The land records is with the settlement commissioner as to decide who owns what land. When you take off the town planning department, then the town planning department will be developing the development control regulations, the regional plans. Then you go to the pollution department, I mean the environment department, they might be controlling the environmental impact. And so and the municipal bodies, of course, will be supporting it. There are many states, like in Maharashtra, we have a separate housing department to focus in. So the housing departments and the organizations involved in them will also be engaging with the housing sector. So, and of course, there is a private sector. There are nationalized banks, there are private banks, there are microfinancing. So the entire spectrum of people and institutions and actors who are a part of housing sector is extremely rich and therefore those interconnections and interactions always become very important. So in Maharashtra, of course, it has always been a important urban state, and I also feel it is one of the most innovative states trying out new ideas for ensuring supply of housing.
So let's talk about the big cities that you have. You've got Mumbai, and you've got Pune, large cities. You've got Nagpur as a slightly smaller city, and then great other cities. Now let's talk about the big cities. Uh, the success of these cities have been in being able to actually allocate areas which were, you had Navi Mumbai coming up with Sidco there. You had with railway connectivity and so on. So you address two key things. One is that it's further away, but it's connected to the mother city. And the
Yeah.
second thing was that you also said that these are areas that have not been harvested yet, so to speak, so that for housing you could have more affordable housing and with state intervention. Now tell me, if you have to, what is the role of planning in these two cities, and do you think that we've been able to equitably manage?
So I think New Mumbai, the conceptualization started in 1973. Probably it is the first smart city company ever in India. It was did in a company format, owned by the government, and so Sidco experiment I think is a one of the great success stories in India, because it conceptualized not only the town planning part but also the commercial and land economics part was really really well thought of, and engaging with the private sector was also well thought of. So that's the reason probably you see New Mumbai the way it has evolved as a greenfield city with wonderful planning norms, and most importantly the financial viability of the entire project, which is always very important. Good intents cannot result other than the financial support to that. So yes, Circo, as you see, was an entirely greenfield project. It identified the land. It went with the original the inhabitants of the place also very well. That's always very difficult in greenfield project, because the land acquisition after 2013, but prior to that, it was a bit easy, and therefore the sharing of the land surplus was done very well in New Mumbai. As otherwise, from the belt from Vashi to Belapur now is the municipal corporation, and Khargar to the Panvel node is now another corporation, which of course came after 20 years. But the initial part as a new township development authority, which is a specific planning authority into the Maharashtra Regional Town Planning Act, was used to have Sidco as an city builders. It's not just only land use planning, but also the entire end-to-end process of from acquiring the land, from sharing it with from doing the town planning, from getting the norms, getting the infrastructure, getting the private sector, building some of the buildings on their own, getting private to build rest, and that's the reason way they came up with this entirely new city. So Sidco, yes, has been a major. It's just not Mumbai which Sidco did. Sidco also did in Vasai Vira. Sidco also did in Nagpur. Sidco also did in Sambhajinagar, as we call it, Nasik, Nanded, even bit of Chikaldara. So this experiment of New Mumbai was just not restricted to New Mumbai or the Vashi Belapur Panvel patch. It also was replicated in other parts of the state as well. So that's, I think, Circo experiment of new township development was a very good experiment to study and even replicate elsewhere. And of course, in Bombay, the Mumbai part, as you know, earlier we had the affordable housing element of that. Uh, Bombay as a port city and a textile city had a lot of influx coming from the laborers even then. And you must have heard the chawl concept, which essentially came up as a affordable housing in the DMC, which to the extent was done by the port trust. They were called as the BPT chores. Some of them were done by the then Bombay Development Department, as well as the BDD chores. And therefore, this there is an example, of this affordable housing supported by the state machinery, by providing land, by building the construction either by themselves or the help of others, and supporting with the infrastructure services. So all these things will have to come together to really have that housing stock made available at affordable prices. Even now, you see the Dharavi redevelopment project is also being contemplated, and also initial parts have been done, which will be a major cluster development framework in which the existing land will be taken. It will be planned as per the latest planning norms, the hygiene, the development, the green spaces, the mobility network, and then with the engagement of the private sector, that is to be developed. So Bombay has been earlier Bombay, now Mumbai has been a great innovator, and it will just maybe might be an extended answer, but. I must share the slum redevelopment part, which Mumbai did from 1995 under the Slum Redevelopment Authority or SRA concept, in which the in situ houses were given to the existing slum dwellers there. A sellable component was allowed with the additional FSI, and this enabled the substantial number of new tenements getting developed, and the people moving into from informal housing to formal housing with the rights of record in their name, and also as per planning norms and the DC rules. So the SRA concept from 1995 has also been a important innovation in the use of land planning tools and instruments to help and assist the affordable housing part through the SRAs. And a similar concept is also happening with this redevelopment. So there is a separate redevelopment framework coming even in Mumbai and elsewhere, in which the existing deliberated structures can be redeveloped, reconstructed with an additional FSI to incentivize and cross subsidize the structure, so that people don't have to live an in situ in situ help is met. So I feel a lot of these concepts in Mumbai and I Mumbai, new planning norms, tools, new institutions have been tried for almost now decades together. And yes, there is always something that is to be improved upon, and I'm sure that the should be happening as elsewhere in the country.
One more thing that Mumbai did exceedingly well was the cooperative housing movement, right? Today, they are coming redevelopment, but allowing the middle classes to actually come together, create cooperative, give land, and get
Absolutely.
redeveloped, right?
Just a historical tidbit, the Rent Control Act, which was in the text of 1946, mostly post World War II scenario, in which the economic shocks were led to a excessive increase in the land rent pricing, and of course the Urban Land Selling Act, which of course is looked by various ways, and ultimately at the JNNRM, it was one of the conditionalities to get the next tranches of funding. So these two acts did influence a lot. The regulatory framework, which is made available, creates a substantial impact on the economics of land and to the demand supply equation, and ultimately the pricing and the affordability element of that. So of course these two acts have to have gone. It has have been substantial, increase in the supply of housing stock. And also, as you know, Maharashtra always had the Maharashtra ownership of flat act. It's called the MOFA, which also took care of many substantial things. And as you rightfully said, the cooperative housing movement, in a way, came because of the Urban Land Selling Act. In a way, because the Urban Land Selling Act ensured that the surplus land is to be given only the cooperative societies, and that probably also the impetus which led to affordability. And I think substantial, I mean, huge number of the middle class and even the upper middle class could get their affordable housing. And now we see that most of the even apartments and condominiums also ultimately get translated adopted into the cooperative housing framework. So thanks a lot for this point. The cooperative housing movement has been huge. It has probably more than crores of people who are members of various housing cooperative societies in Maharashtra. So, yeah.
So when you talk about urbanization, at one point of time, it was the large cities, right? It was Mumbai, it was Pune to a smaller extent, but it was Delhi, Hyderabad, Chennai, Bangalore. It was concentrated in seven or eight areas. Today, urbanization has spread with the urban infrastructure coming up, transport infrastructure, transport connectivity, and so on. Today you're seeing a lot more connecting points, and people don't always have to come to the big city and live like rats in a city which does not give it affordable and rental housing, housing for sale, and so on. As it's all about land economics, right, sir? Where the land is most expensive, would you build for the have-nots? And if you don't build for the have-nots, where do they stay? In chawls, mostly, right? How do you tackle this from a planning perspective?
So if you really look at the housing demand, the growth of the population, due to new younger laborers coming into the city. Rental housing was something which existed even prior to this term becoming popular, because even in earlier chawls, if you remember, were essentially rental housing. It is not that you owned it; you were always using it on rent, and therefore, in a way, it might sound a bit counterintuitive. But optimality of regulation, it is not that it is being, we are justifying any informal housing, but to an extent, if you look at the houseless problems, maybe of developed countries, or maybe some of the one of the most prosperous cities are that way, otherwise notorious with the houseless problems, with this other connected issues. So probably a humane regulatory framework which takes care and of the basic concerns of most of the people, I think, is also in a way informally emerges, especially in a country like India. So it is not justifying anything, but the affordability of younger migrant laborers, to an extent by rental housing, is, as you know, the new PMAY is supporting the new rental housing construction around the industrial areas. To that, availability of land is always the issue. So reserving lands in the master plans for affordable housing, I think, is a very important step that has to be taken. And probably the government land available with the various public sectors, like in Mumbai, we always say probably the government, central government organizations are the most biggest landowners of Mumbai. I mean, it is partly the land which is with the various agencies is huge. So probably that land also needs to come up for affordable housing. And I think the planning part, as you said, the TDR or the FSI, the F or FAR as it's called in other parts of the country, also needs to be fundamentally rethought. The utility, the necessity of a concept like FSI in this particular format, if whether we really require, or probably some other framework like other states in India which have in a way removed this concept of FSI at all. It's not, it's not a number which is imposed upon you in that way, so, according to zones. So probably this, as we know, is often talk that country. I mean, some cities like Singapore or New York or other global cities have FSS as high as maybe 15 or 20 or 25 in some parts. So probably from the planning issue also, in a way, we are in a position to incentivize the construction of affordable housing by granting additional, incentive FSI. That's one approach which is being taken, and that's what really happened in the rental housing, even Mumbai also, to and even some other places. But it's essentially Mumbai because it is the differential of land pricing which enables the incentivization and subsidy, cross subsidizing it in a way. So this, in the planning instrument, affordability, rental housing, then additional FSI becomes one planning tool which was done. Now, even in Mumbai, there's another. I'm sorry, I'm going back to Mumbai because because so much of innovation has happened. So probably that also needs to come. Like I think we had this Bombay Urban Transformation Project in 1980s, which of course then become MUTP, the Mumbai Urban Transformation Project, Phase One, Phase Two A, Phase Three, which essentially was the mobility infrastructure which was supported by the World Bank, either the railways or the mostly road construction. So the one of the policy, the rehab policy, as we call of the PPP, or the project affected persons, PAPs, was also important in, I think, innovation which happened in Mumbai, and this led to a policy of a resettlement of the project affected person with the help of planning tools. So you would find that MMRDA in its capacity also incentivize the construction of tenements to house the project affected person by by this incentive FSI, and that also created a huge stock of, if I'm not mistaken, I'm sorry, I left that part. I'm not won't be very comfortable with numbers, but the magnitude is as big as 100,000 houses. 1 lakh houses came out of this planning tool of incentive FSI to rehabilitate the project affected person in the various projects of Mumbai. and that I think is somehow it's not talked of. It goes normally into the PAPs, but it is a housing stock made available to the people there. So that I think has been the various permutation combinations of planning tools of planning land, availability of land, planning tools, and availability of the permissible house area by incentive FSI. I think, and use of the private operators, private people. It might be either the government. Sometimes it is also the public sector which takes part in such an activity, as we are seeing in some places of conceptualize in in even Mumbai, in which the organizations like MMRD and CIDCO are also entering in a very big way in the affordable housing sector with help of their planning tools, because they are planning authorities as well as infrastructure providers who can take care of the supporting. So I think a lot of innovation is happening to increase the affordable housing from MADA and other places as well.
How is technology help? Is there, today is a era of AI and machine learning and so
Yeah, yeah.
on, and there are private sector companies which are working with the municipal authorities, especially Mumbai. Is
Mhm.
that also a big factor in speeding up the process?
Actually, why we have reached this whole of city and whole of society approach. I think this distinction between the state and the non-state or the non-government and the private sector, I think, needs to really move out. We need to move out of this, and we actually require a ecosystem approach, a network approach for anything to really take that scale and take that. That magnitude and that speed and the quality that we're looking at. It has to be whole of city, the whole of society, and everybody will have to come together to create that impact, the accelerated impact in the least possible time, because time is also a major concern, because as we know, SDGs 11, the housing is an important part of that, and we have to reach it by in a limited time frame. So I think the private sector in IT, in AI, even in the is what we call as the informal housing also needs to be formalized. I mean, it's not that not every all informal is not illegal, and actually we make law, that's why make things illegal. So it's up to us to have an appropriate and optimal regulatory framework which is not constraining, which is humane, which is supportive of the activities. I mean, it's if you abolition act, then there is nothing illegal. As we see in urban land ceiling, it was many things were illegal. It was there. We abolished it. It stopped becoming illegal. It's as simple as that. So the entire that's why this system approach, design approach, network framework, ecosystem approach is also equally essential for this sector, housing sector, which would create these resonances and this connects, which will lead to accelerated SDG attainments and private sector, and also the new tech. Like, you have the Earth observations, the satellite mappings, the visual, the digital cities, the various other tools are coming in which you can also experiment to the closest possible scale of the reality as to how the city would evolve depending upon the planning tools that you are going to use. That if you make such an area of high FSI, what is the impact? Low FSI, what is the impact? So these tools which were otherwise not available are now being made available to the planning community, and the private sector, as I said, is also an important partner in this housing provision. And it's a very well taken point that this ecosystem approach is crucial for ensuring affordable housing everywhere, just not India but even elsewhere.
So all the private reports that have come out have said that Maharashtra has had the out of in the last 3 years, Maharashtra is the state that was able to keep affordable housing coming. The statistics show that the numbers are higher in Maharashtra, probably because of redevelopment, probably because there is a lot of new affordable housing coming up because of the redevelopment projects. But in Maharashtra, you've got Mumbai as a model, right? A model that is working, that the rest of the country is drawing upon in terms of redevelopment, FSI, TDR, and so on. Incentivization, and you have a 20-year planning process. You have a environmental planning process. You're a coastal city under threat, so it is being handled. With the rest of the cities, you have a model within your own state, right? How much do you draw upon this when it comes to the planning of tier 2 cities, other smaller cities?
Actually, as you said, the urban system of Maharashtra is quite varied. There are 424, urban local bodies now, out of which, of course, I am not counting the cantonment boards and the ports and other places or the industrial township, so to say. But 424 are the urban local bodies, and of course, Mumbai is Mumbai and MMR is MMR and also PMR. But substantial, population, urban population also stays in the district headquarters and the taluka headquarters, in which there has to be a different approach for the affordable housing. One thing is there, then we just try to, when we look at the construction rates, we find that the average rate of construction in carpet area square feet would be around 2,000 rupees a square feet, the construction cost. So if you take maybe a small 400 square foot place, maybe one bedroom or 500, so either construction cost as such shouldn't be more than 8 to 10 lakhs of cement concrete that we are looking at. So remaining cost very often is of the land price, maybe the speculation part, and the rent seeking. Otherwise, when you really look at the bracket of affordability, so for another latest PMAY, you know that the 6 lakh is the annual limit we are talking of an household to be eligible, at least in the bigger places. And the as far as I think the GST concessions are given, I think affordable limit goes to around 40 to 45 lakhs house. So that if we really look at that range, then as we say, we have two to three approaches to ensure affordable housing. One becomes the regulatory, one, of course, is the incentivizing by missions, and third, of course, becomes the direct intervention which the government as such take. All these three approaches, in a way, are available, but of course, a major difference here is that the incentivization due to the land pricing, which happens as a TDR or the FSI, something is has a limited utility in smaller places. So you obviously can't have a cross subsidization of a heavily funded, heavily priced property to subsidize that. So in smaller places, very often incentive mechanism through the state missions on the central missions is also an important place, which in a way affects, has a market there, creates an impact. Like we have this PMAY, the Prime Minister Awas Yojana. Prior to that, we had the RAY, the Rajiv Awas Yojana. Prior to that, there was also the BSUP, which are basic services for urban poor in big cities, and IHHSDP, which was in the smaller cities. So, a direct intervention of the mission is an important tool to be used in smaller and medium towns. Then, as I said, even CIDCO him itself enters, also works in smaller places. MADA, which is the parastatal of the Housing Department of Maharashtra, also has various regional boards through which they enter into provision of affordable housing. And planning norms, as I say, availability of land. The government of Maharashtra recently, maybe a year back, 2 years back, allowed even the illegal resettlements. I mean, informality and illegality, which is often associated with housing, was made liberal to the great extent, in which the provision of giving the pattas or the leases to the settlers, that option was also taken. Even if there is a illegal settlement in a government land, even that land with certain planning norms is also now also made available to the people staying there. So in the regulatory framework, it is now becoming less rigid. It is allowing the people to use it for affordable housing. In intervention, as I said, the PMAY is an important scheme. And along with the PMA, there have also been earlier other missions of the state government, which is like the Valmiki Ambedkar Awas Yojana, which was meant for particular, less fortunate sectors. Then there is also another scheme which went through. Used to be used for other specific people. There is also a very major housing scheme which also was inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister last year in the district Solapur near the Kumbharli. 30,000 houses, 30,000 houses, out of which 15,000 are complete. Uh, was also came up through this. As I said, the state intervention for making affordable houses available to this. So it is going to be a mix of multiple approaches of regulation development, making land available, making funding available, making finance available, supporting the cities also technically through the DPRs and making of DPR, financing it in a way. So I think this multi-sector approach is also seen even in the smaller districts in which, and there is of course an innate market also there. It's just not that everything has to be done by these missions. There is a natural response market that evolves to the needs of a particular city. Like the land is relatively less pricey there, the construction also becomes a bit easier. So even every small city also has its own innate housing market, which runs irrespective of this government interventions and the other support that we are talking about. And of course, housing finance has been a very important part, so that its availability has been a very important support system to all the housing construction, irrespective of whether it is from government or from the mission or from the cooperative societies, funding made available to the developers. The entire thing is helping in even in the smaller and medium cities and towns also. Yeah.
So, one last question, a quick response. How do you see the role of the private sector, and what should be the role of the government in harnessing the best potential out of the private sector?
I think the partnership is there. It is just not public and private. It's also public, private, and people, the community together. All this coming together and trusting each other. It's not that we doubt each other's intentions, that someone wants to seek the rent or regulate or strangle or whatever. So and I think the RERA, I missed out on the RERA part, but RERA also has been a very important, confidence building regulatory enactment, which has allowed people to trust each other, as I say. So yes, trusting each other, I think, is very important, and having a regulatory ecosystem framework to support and assist this trust making with each other, I think it will be a major intervention that could help make housing more affordable in most of our cities. Yeah.
Thank you. So, this is where we'll conclude this episode. But I think one of the things that we would like to do is you talked about the Shola, for example. We'd like to dig deeper and figure out whether that serves as a model for many other cities across the country. You talked about how, the expensive land in Mumbai actually becomes in its favor because you can give incentives, you can use land as incentives, right? So
Mhm.
we'll talk about these issues in greater detail in
Yeah,
a subsequent
sure.
episode. But thank you so
Absolutely.
much for joining us
No,
today.
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Jayshree. And the efforts that you are doing is extremely credible, important, because people need to. I always believe in, public policy can't be public unless people know about it.
Right,
So,
right,
I mean, we talk of public policy as is what government does, but actually, public policy becomes public only if public knows about it. So, I
right,
think that your intervention and your effort, I think, extremely important. That people at least need to know what is happening. Very
right,
often people are so busy with other things, and public policy, that to housing and real estate, that way becomes very limited area of very limited interest of people, but it is most impactful. I mean, it is the most single impacting sector anywhere in urban India now or all elsewhere. So I think it's very great that we need to communicate issues, and the urban insight thing is also very important, because people are either worried or fed up or annoyed with things happening, but not understanding why it is the way it is. There has to be
right.
some bottleneck, some chain of causation which is leading to it. If you have to improve on it, you have to tinker along with that chain of causation somewhere by making resources available differently. So I think it's great. Thanks a lot, and congratulations for making it. And I'm thanking you as a urban person for your conducting such an important initiative. That's great.
Thank you so much, sir. That's very
Thank,
kind of you. Thank you so
thanks.
much. Found this video useful? Please subscribe to this channel for more such videos. Do like and share with as many people as you can.